Good evening, and welcome to Thursday, March 5th. Another session, another time, episode. I haven't decided what to call this, a session or an episode, but however we think about it, I want to welcome you to another evening of Let's Talk Power Live. First of all, why is it March? Can someone tell me? I've been asking a lot of people why it's March. I looked up and it was March. I have no idea where February and January went, but here we are. So welcome to another time of Let's Talk Power Live. I'm Dr. Tangi. I'm your show host. I'm also an author. I run the organization Liaison Educational Partners, and I'm excited to welcome you to this time. Before we go any further, number one, let me also say thank you to every person who has decided to subscribe to this channel. We thank you. We appreciate you. And for all of you who are out there listening and who are here with us tonight, but have not decided to say, you know what, I want to be part of this learning community, let this be your special invitation from me to be a part of the Let's Talk Power learning community and family. Welcome you, invite you to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and tonight, please, somebody leave me a comment and let me know that you're here and what we're talking about is resonating and tracking with you. So tonight we enter March. We just came off the heels of Black History Month, and we had a wonderful time sharing ideas and introducing new people to you. Some you knew, some maybe you didn't know. But tonight we turn the corner. And for this month, we turn the corner into another topic, another series, another way of looking at the world in education through this lens of power. This time of year, I thought it was very important for us to take a pause and look at the concept of assessment. This time of year, assessment is very important because benchmarks are coming up or have already started. But right around the corner are state assessments, your end of course, your end of grade, your state comprehensive exams or course exams. And what better time than now to take a step back and look at this idea of assessment, which is often seen as something technical. It's often seen as something objective, not imbued with anybody's idea or anyone's biases. But if we take a step back, like we're going to do tonight and over the next course of the next few weeks, and we look at history and we bring ourselves forward, we're going to see that assessments are anything but neutral. They've always been shrouded in the decision-making power of someone else. We know that assessments have always been a determiner of someone's access to something, right? They've always been a way to direct access. They have always been a way that displaces others and makes room for some. And so when we talk about power in education, we talk about assessments. You cannot separate the two. Which brings me, again, every single week, I share two definitions with you. I share the definition of power in education, and then I also share my definition of instructional power. So let's take a look again at what this idea of instructional power really, really is, and what it really means when we take a look at it in education itself. So here's that definition I share every single week. Education is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power. The control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. So that definition right there speaks exactly to how we can understand assessment through this lens. It really shapes the dynamics of power around this time of year. A lot of times students feel very disenfranchised this time of year because they are put on the conveyor belt of just being a number, associated with whether they're a level 2 or a 4, if they are exceeding or exemplary. They are relegated to these buckets. And every time someone is making an assessment, whether somebody is administering that assessment, or whether somebody is making determinations about the meaning of those assessments, they are exercising instructional power. Therefore, the neutrality is out the window. So every time you administer something that is going to give you back a number and tell you something about somebody else, it means that you now have stepped into the use of your instructional power in a very operational way. This is why I talk about it. I talk about, we hear power, it's always up here in the sky. But here at Let's Talk Power Live, we talk about power in operational ways. We mean for people to understand that the power is real. It is real in education, and it has operational aspects. So now that I shared the definition of power in education, let's talk about my definition of instructional power. And here it is. Instructional power can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed authority to afford or constrain a student's access to their learning. That is it in a nutshell. But those have actions. What does it mean when you're exercising your state, district, or school ascribed authority to do this affording or constraining? What it means is you are in the business of implementing actions based upon your history, based upon your understanding of the relationship between adults and students. And that is what's really driving your actions. Now, those actions can be overt and conscious, or they can be covert, involuntary, unconscious, or even subconscious. What I found in my work and my conversations is that a lot of times the idea of power is something so deeply buried in the recesses of our minds that we don't understand what's happening in the decisions we make. And so that is another reason why we talk about power, because I want you as a leader, as an educator, wherever you are, to really know what it means when you exercise your power. So that is where we're headed this week, this month, over these next few weeks. But as we think about history and we think about assessments, and every week I do this before we dive deeply, I want to ground our work into some data. So I'm going to share some data with you and really give you some understanding of where we are, right? The measurement and power. When we talk about assessments being objective or whether they are neutral, we can all agree right now, power and assessments are inextricably linked. They go hand in hand. That is how it works. So let's take a look at some history, right? What is an assessment? I just got asked. An assessment is something that allows you to measure something or someone. We get measured the day we're born. The very first thing the doctor does is it weighs you. It tells you how much the baby weighed and how long they are. And then it also gives you the quality of life score. So we are assessing and measuring and giving numbers right away. But if we walk back in history, we know that early intelligence testing emerged through the eugenics era in the 1900s. That began this trek towards putting people in buckets and putting them on the conveyor belt, right? And then we have testing used as a way to rank populations, to put them on this stream of how are they being measured, being valued? What does that look like? And then we know that there were norming samples, excluding big, large groups of people. these samples were based upon a narrowly constructed group, which I'm going to give you in a moment. And then we know that IQ scores, we love the IQ scores, were cited as evidence of racial hierarchy in policy debates. We also know that even before the eugenics era, that there were cranium tests used, another measurement, and the size of your cranium was used to determine how smart you were. But then we looked at who was measured and how were they measured. This is important to really dig into and really understand, because early intelligence tests were normed primarily on white male samples. What does that mean? It excluded women and it excluded people of color, right? We have women and Black Americans, and our other groups who were in the United States at that time weren't even considered in the population. They were considered in the cranium studies, but they were not considered in these hierarchies of who had value based upon their quote unquote intellect and their scores. And we know that high IQ tests were used, but they continue to be used to sort people. So this time of year, we know that young people are particularly vulnerable to how they're being viewed relative to what they score on any given test at any given time. And that is something that we have to begin to, as leaders in education, as educators on any level at all, we have to begin to ask ourselves, how can we make sure, I think I'll say it that way, how can we make sure that it's very important that our young people are in this time of their life and they're not being seen as mere numbers. Now, I want to be clear and I want to go right on the record. Assessments matter. It is important for us to understand how children are progressing. It is 100% valid for a parent to expect quantitative data about how their children are doing after having been in school for 9 months. I say it a lot. Parents send their kids to school for two main reasons: to know stuff and know how to do stuff. And they also kind of overarchingly want to make sure that their children are learning and doing more than when they got there. So as we think about power and assessments, it is not that we don't want to give assessments. The challenge is who is making the assessments, who is administering the assessments, and most importantly, who is crafting the narrative around the assessments that are being given. And that is the critical question that we tend to lose when we think about assessments as being objective, right? Because when assessments are done to somebody, as opposed to being done with somebody, the power imbalance is already baked in and the power imbalance explodes. So I want to talk now about what it looks like when we have the data about disenfranchising assessments. I want to share with you some quick ideas. We went through history back. Let's come forward a little bit and look at what we're finding that can categorize this disenfranchising time for young people. Number one thing, RAND surveys have shown that during this time of year, curriculum narrows. We begin to narrow down the curriculum. We begin to focus on what's called power standards, whatever your standards are. And I will say, I work with school districts across the country, and this is already happening. And sometimes it is based upon the fact that the state assessments really focus on critical standards. They take a high approach to what the standards that are going to be assessed are, and they leave some of the standards that quote unquote out. So this time of year, if you are a parent and you're watching, welcome. But if you are a district leader, state leader, school leader, classroom leader, you are feeling this narrowing down of your curriculum and you're making critical choices about what is to be quote unquote taught, retaught, or maybe not taught at all. That's something to think about. And then test preparation increases, especially and you see it here, certain schools. Certain schools have more what we call test boot camps than others. I was in a school that was a Title I school, and just before our end of the year assessments, we stopped teaching altogether. And what we did was we looked at our data and we decided which students needed what, and we created what we call them. We call them centers and learning cycles. And so we would filter our students around these cycles every 3 to 4 weeks, and they would learn a skill, and we would test them at the beginning of the cycle, do some teaching, and test them again at the end of the cycle. So our test preparation went up. Now, again, I want to be clear. Kaplan exists for a reason. Princeton Review exists for a reason. So preparing students to do well on an assessment is not the issue. The issue is what happens to students as a result of this. What matters is, are students partners in this process or not? That is the critical question. And oftentimes, as you see in this last bullet, authentic student voice decreases. Now, what does that mean? When we authentically decrease the student voice, everything happens to them. We give them their data, but we do not involve them in the conversation. We do not help them build their data literacy. We don't involve them. We don't give them avenues to help them really deeply understand. Thank you so much. He says this is extremely helpful for me as a parent to understand. I appreciate you being here. And so I want to make sure that we are looking at this through the lens of what it means for young people to build their data literacy. It's not just about giving them their score. It isn't just about, hey, did you get how many right or how many wrong? There's a bigger question. The bigger question is, do they know whether or not or what the even assessment is about? Do they know why they're taking the assessment? Do they know how they're going to be assessed and what their outcomes mean? Do they have any idea about whether or not or how the data will be responsive? Are you as a leader, classroom leader, building leader, how are you going to respond to that? Young people don't get to ask those questions. And then they want to know, is there a connection between how they're being assessed and how they're being taught? Sometimes they're not. Sometimes the way that they are being assessed is directly opposite to how they're being taught. Is there alignment? And we don't teach young people how to really ask questions about their data besides, did I get it right or did I get it wrong? I have the opportunity now to be partnering with a school in Massachusetts, and one of the principals there and I sat down and we thought about how can we help our young people begin to build this data literacy. And we did that by giving them specific action items. We gave them tools to help students dig into the kind of mistakes they made so they can get beyond whether I got it right or wrong. We want them looking at the mistakes through a critical lens. Why did I make that mistake? What can I do next time when I take this very same assessment? That's how you begin to build their literacy. But then we want to make sure that students see the value in assessment, not just here's another test, here's another project, but what is the value of that assessment on their learning and on the outcomes themselves. And then we want them to be empowered. We really want data assessments to empower them because we talk about agency all the time. And the question is, how do we get to the agentic student that we want? We talk about student voice. That's more than just student council. That's more than just your PBIS. We want students to build their data literacy academically. If we're talking about the power in education and we want students to be partners, then we've got to be able to build that kind of literacy in them. So I want to talk now and give our leaders something to really consider. So, assessment leadership. What is assessment leadership? We want the assessment to be transparent. Students need to understand what is being measured, why, and I'm going to add something here. They need to know how. But this is not just a leader in a building. This is a leader in a district. This is the classroom leader. How are you helping students? How are you transferring your instructional power as the administrator of the assessment? And maybe you are also the developer. Maybe you have a building developed assessment or a district developed assessment. You as the developer, how are you shifting or giving strategies and processes to shift that instructional power to incorporate students? As a leader, your assessment leadership, share interpretive authority. Students help analyze their data. What more powerful way to build agency as there is to incorporate and bring your young people into the conversation? That is a critical, undeniable strategy. But then want to shift that focus from data reporting to data responsibility. That is critical. How do we do that? What does it look like when we do that to really help our young people build the kind of agency that we all say that we want? Now, every week I give power moves so that you can walk away from our time together with something that you can implement right now or tomorrow. And sometimes that right now implementation is in your own thinking. It's not always a tangible action. It really can, right? And I want you to think about what it means to have a power move. So, power move number one, and I just said it as the assessment leadership, make data transparent. What does it look like? Students understand the criteria and the purpose. They understand the what and the why. And you know what? I'm going to add how, because we know that there are different ways to assess students. But also, leaders, clarify what data does and does not measure. It cannot measure everything. So be clear with your educators and help your educators be clear with your students. And then let's go ahead and get those assumptions named openly. Sometimes we keep them in our head. And when we keep them in our head, they become part of that hidden curriculum. And then what does this mean? What's the impact of this? The impact of this is that evaluation stops being this mysterious thing that's in the third rail, in the cloud somewhere, and it starts being developmental. Now, this is a disruptive action. This making data transparent in this way is disruptive and meant to be. So power move number two, share interpretive authority. I just said that in the previous seconds. What does it look like? Have students reflect before the adults label them. Help your students get metacognitive so that they can really get into what's going on before you begin as the adult to slap a label on them. Educators, collect qualitative and the quantitative data. We want balance. You want the numbers, but you want to know what's underneath the numbers. Do both of those. And then leaders, ask, how does the assessment feel to the learners? That way you can create connections. What is the impact of this? Data becomes collaborative instead of hierarchical. And right now, data is disenfranchising to students because it is hierarchical and we don't bring them into the conversation. Power move number 3, create conditions. Empowerment necessitates conditions be created. We think it's just something that you can walk into Monday morning off the weekend. You got to be intentional about it. And you got to really ensure that the stage is set for it to happen. So what does it look like in practice? Adults actively support students in developing goals based upon their knowledge and their assessment results, not based upon what you want, but based upon them. And then leaders are examining the learning environment for power protective patterns, and they make the adjustments to build the agency. There are power protecting patterns, particularly this time of year. And we want you to be able to disrupt that, but you can't do it until you have spent some time examining your environment. And then bring your teams together. Let the teams analyze data to determine a deeper story. And I'm going to challenge you. In those teams, make sure you bring some students. And then make sure you bring some parents so that the team can be comprehensive. And what is the impact of this? The data becomes a tool for learning and growth, not just sorting. Again, data in and of itself is not a problem. The challenge is what we do with it. And that's really important to consider. Data does not have to be disenfranchising. As we learned from history, right, we understand that historically data has been used as a determinant to keep groups in spaces that are narrowly defined, right? It's been used as a tool of suppression and oppression. It doesn't have to. And so we really want data to be an avenue for advancement and an avenue for affording opportunity, not just constraining it as it has been used in the past. So let's kind of recap our time. We know that data responsibility is important. This is our drive tool. We are going to be looking at each one of these letters through the next few weeks. Today, we talked about the D part, data responsibility, right? Who is responsible for understanding and acting on the data? We know traditionally that it has been adults determining and acting, but we want that to be a much more comprehensive approach. And then the R means responsible. Does the data lead to instructional adjustments? Is it instructionally aligned? That is our I. Does the assessment actually measure what students were taught and how they were taught? And then V, is it valuable? Does your data provide meaningful insight into learning and teaching? And then E, is it empowering? Does the data help students see their growth and next steps? This is our drive tool. And we are excited to really delve into that across these next few weeks with you. Well, we're coming down to the end of our time today. Next week, I'm excited to bring Melissa Lambert to our stage, to our community. She's the executive director in the Office of School Leadership and Engagement in Yonkers. And we're excited to have her join us. She is a multilingual expert, and we are excited to bring her to our stage next week. Well, every week we have a gem for the journey. But wait, before I get to the gem, have you hit that subscribe button? If you have, thank you so much. If you have not, there's still time. Hit that subscribe button. Please leave us a comment and share it with somebody else. We want this Let's Talk Power Live to show up in your feed, everyone's feed. Our gem for the journey, we are starting with this right here, right now. We are allowing you first dibs on this. I'm going to put that link here for you. You can take a look at today's drive tool. There is the link for you right there. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is not the drive link. This is the book. Oh, my mind is somewhere else. Let me get you your book right there. This is your book link. That is your scan right there. Scan the QR code. And this is your book link. Please, if you don't have your book, this is where you can get your book. So please go ahead and get your book. Now we're going to give you today's journey. This is our gem for the day, our drive tool. Each week, you're going to see the individual tool, right? This week, it's all about the D. It's all about data responsibility. There is your QR code, and there is the actual drive tool link. Go ahead and get that link. Make sure that you have access to it. We would love for you to delve into it and let us know how you are thinking. Here's our recap. We've done a lot of work. 30 minutes goes by so fast. Here's what we know. Right now, I want to share this with you so you can really take a look at it. Measurement carries power. It always has. It always will. Assessment processes are a leadership decision. How you look at the data, what you do with the data. There are 3 power shifts that assessment culture, right? There's transparency, there's shared interpretation, and there's data responsibility. And last, drive helps leaders examine the quality of the data conversation, the responsibility, whether it is responsive, instructionally aligned, valuable, and empowering. So that is what we talked about this week. A lot of data, looking at history, marching forward, really leaning into what we know about data and its impact on women. This is Women's History Month. We know that data has been used to say a lot of pejorative things about women and people of color. But we also know that data does not have to be disenfranchising. So thank you for joining me tonight on another episode of Let's Talk Power Live. I look forward to seeing you next week. Remember, hit the like button, hit the share button, leave me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking about tonight's episode. I would love to be in conversation with you, but would love to have you as part of the family. All right, everybody, we will see you next Thursday, 5:30 for Let's Talk Power Live.